The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk Board TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to another Ask the Expert show. We're here in beautiful, beautiful South Florida. And this is our first Thursday of the month, which means this is our number one show, not just here in South Florida, but Tampa, Atlanta, Philadelphia, Dallas, Houston. This is our number one show throughout all of our markets. It's been that way for the past 4 or 5 years. People just love this show. And I think it might have to do a little bit about maybe one of the senior partners who's been doing this for so many years. Let me introduce you to our friend, board certified attorney Robert K. of K. Bender Rimbaum.
Hello, Steve.
Hi, Robert. How you doing, buddy?
Doing well. How about you?
We're doing well. I love first Thursday of the month is my favorite because I know this is going to be such an easy show to do. And we have had so many questions from listeners from the last time you were on. I mean, I think our audience is getting a little lazy, though. Call us up on the phone. Call us at 561-623-9429 if you have a question. A lot of them keep saying that it's hard driving and being on the phone at the same time. We don't want anybody to have a wreck doing it. So just keep sending your questions in, and Robert will keep answering them. I got to tell you, Robert, the show, since we've gone now to TV, we are getting emails and texts from all over Florida, and as well as in Georgia, Alabama. I had 2 from Alabama for your show.
No, I'm not even familiar with Alabama law.
Yeah, I know, it's amazing. But they're watching us on TV, so let them sit back and enjoy. But what I'm getting at is we do this every week. You tell people about the firm, but because we've got so many new listeners, would you mind just telling people about your firm and what you do?
Well, as you've said, K. Bender Rimbaum is a full-service law firm that focuses our activities and attention on providing representation to community associations, condominiums, homeowners associations, and co-ops primarily, providing all aspects of legal representation for an operation of community association. For example, reviewing the covenants and responding to questions about rights and responsibilities of the owners and the association, addressing covenant violations, unpaid maintenance assessments, contract negotiations with third parties, dealing with construction defect, commercial litigation of all sorts, be it the covenant violation type or contractual disputes and construction defects, be it with developer or contractors for longstanding communities. Pretty much everything that an association deals with on a day-to-day basis, the firm will provide those types of legal services. Doing so out of our offices in Pompano Beach is the main office, Palm Beach Gardens, Orlando, and Tampa.
I was going to add, yeah, Neb, when we first started, it was Palm Beach Gardens and Pompano, and now you're Tampa and you're Orlando. And What's the difference now with the way you have to conduct business versus how it was 10 years ago?
Well, it's a lot more electronic now. We have a lot of meetings on Zoom where we used to be running around. Zoom can be a lot more efficient. While it has its downside, it does allow us to be in more places more quickly and more accessible to our clients than we used to be, which is a good thing. I mean, telephones were good. A lot of people like the visual aspect of the Zooming and the in-person. We're getting back into the in-person work as well, with situations resolving or getting less of a concern from what it used to be. So that's the big thing that I see.
Do you feel like there's more that board members need to know now than ever before?
That seems to be the case. It's an area of the law that's constantly evolving, a lot more than many others. Every year there's tinkering going on in legislation. There's case decisions by the courts that are making interpretations. Some of them we don't necessarily agree with, but once the court makes a ruling, then that's the law of the land, and that's what we deal with. One example of that, not too long ago, a court made a ruling that resignations from the board have to be in writing. That's not what the statute says, but that was what the court says. So until there's another ruling of a court that says otherwise, a resignation from the board has to be in writing to be effective. Lots of times owners have issues with board members get upset and they say, I quit, and they leave. A verbal resignation under the law currently would not be effective. They'd have to confirm that in writing. So the next meeting they come back and they're back there. I thought you quit.
Yeah. Well, I have learned over the years, there is so much that you do for your clients. You have to be almost an expert in so many different fields, because there's so many different hats that are worn by board members and decisions they have to make. So, and none of them are professionals at this. You're the professionals. So, but anyway, listen, if people would like to call up, there's so many changes going on now. Our number here is 561-623-9429. If you're watching us on TV, you can actually write your questions in now. We have a chat board.
If you're shy, yes.
Okay. What did I miss?
I said if you're shy, you can write a question in the chat line instead of calling.
So go ahead. And then we have got so many text messages from you that we're going to be reading today. And then Robert, as always does, they give their time, a lot of their time away to educate people. And we have all your classes that are going to be coming on for this month also.
And as you can see in the scroll, there's a lot this month.
Yeah, there is. You never realize there's that many because you read them, and then I'm looking at them now, and you got a lot going on this month.
There's some concentration in a couple of weeks. We had one just this past Tuesday at the Broward Expo that was at the Signature Grand. So that one's already passed. We have another expo in Palm Beach next week on April the 11th at the Palm Beach County Convention Center. And we've got two classes going on there, 9:30 to 10:30, Covenant Enforceability of Homeowners and Condominiums Association. There is some continuing education credit for that one. And at 2:30 to 4:30 is a legal update for 2023, which means the laws that were passed in 2022. And there is continuing education for that as well. Wednesday, the next day, we have a Zoom at 11 o'clock till noon. It's a panel discussion, what you need to know and how proposed legislation may affect your association. Michael Bender will be participating in that Zoom event that's hosted by Affinity Management. And then the very next day, on April 13th, we have a Condominium Association board member certification on Zoom at 12 noon to 2 p.m. Andrew Black from our Pompano office will be providing the course information on that. There's continuing education on that as well. Then the very next day, April 14th, a Friday one, which is unusual, but one that is certainly of interest across the state, structural integrity and Senate Bill 4D updates. Lisa McGill will be providing that information from our Pompano office. It's hosted by Real Manage, and that's also will be a Zoom item. There is no education credits for that one, but it is a hot topic. Then on Monday, April 17th at 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, we have a Condominium Association board member certification, a second one for this month, that Peter Mullengarden from our Palm Beach Gardens office will be providing the information, hosted by ACE by TSK. And on April 19th, Wednesday, Association Leadership Legislative Update with Open Forum Q&A that will have Michael Bender and Jeffrey Rambam on. It's hosted by the Castle Group, Wednesday, April 19th. That's a kind of an open forum of questions and answers that it's in the Zoom format. So that one should be very interesting to any participants.
How long is that one for?
That goes from noon to 1.
You're going to need more time than that.
Well, we're just participating with the Castle Group. They're hosting. And then on April 20th, jumping into the present, why updating your governing documents is critically important. Emily Gannon from our Pompano Beach office will be providing the information on that, hosted by Campbell Property Management. And then we have on April the 24th, a Homeowner Association board member certification from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock. Peter Mullengarden will be providing the information there from our Palm Beach Gardens office, hosted by ACE by TSK. Then on April 26th, around this date, we have the Orlando Expo. We'll be participating there. We have a Navigating Fair Housing Act Assistance Animal or Pet lecture at 9:30 in the morning. That's at the Orange County Convention Center. And then on April 27th, there's a Tampa Expo, and that's at the Tampa Convention Center. We have 2 classes at that one. At 9:30, guest restrictions and screening tenants and new owners. Is that worthwhile? And then at 2:30 to 4:30 is the legal update for 2023, being the law changes from 2022. So that's all scrolling on your screen. That's more information about what's upcoming in the month of April.
And we'll be scrolling the whole show. Well, you can, if you miss it when it goes around, it'll come back around again.
And then go to kbrlegal.com, click on the calendar, and choose any event that you like, and register yourself so that you can get the appropriate links for participating in the Zoom.
I want to ask you, because I think one of your last classes were Tampa. For some reason, we are getting a lot of mail from Tampa. You're just opening up an office there. Will you have as many classes in Tampa like you do here?
Eventually we should, but most of our classes these days are in the Zoom format, so it's available across the state. No matter where we are, we're able to provide that information to anybody who's out there who's interested. Mostly the in-person ones are at expos these days, but down the line we may see more in-person classes coming up.
Well, we've got a few minutes before we go to our first break. I want to go to Dixon wants to know, what good is any of the pending legislation of the condo reserve laws if deadlines aren't being extended? Have you heard anything about extensions?
Well, I'm not sure what he means about what good are any if deadlines aren't being extended, because the purpose of the legislation last year on these reserve requirements was to reinforce having these condominium associations be sufficiently financed for these identified items. There may be some extensions. There is some bills pending in the current legislative session. And among the items within the bill is some extension as to some of the effects of the bill that was adopted last year. And also some revision to who would qualify to do reserve studies. So there'd be a wider circle of people out there that associations can reach out to get those reserve studies done.
You know, I want to, for the next show, would you mind opening up your Daily Mail for the next show? I keep looking, your stack looks like mail right
behind me. That's old mail.
Oh, okay. I thought it was just today's mail. Okay. If you have a question, you can write it in here. If you are listening on radio or the podcast, you can call us at 561-623-9429. You can also catch us on www.w4cy.com. Our next question is Winston in Delray Beach. Can you explain the process of how the board of directors file a complaint against a property manager with the DBPR?
Well, that process is actually not that involved or complex procedurally wise. The best approach to take is to go on the website of the Department of Business and Professional Regulation and choose the portion that covers community association managers. And on the website, there is a form that would allow you to electronically make your complaint and deliver it to the department. It's important that before making such a complaint that you have sufficient evidence or documentation to support whatever claims are being asserted against the manager for the supposed violation of their statutory and rural requirements. And then the department will get back with the association to get further information as needed and then pursue the management individual or company as indicated.
Okay, questions are coming in. Our board just posted a web survey which allowed unlimited votes by anyone. They are using results to justify spending community funds. How I can prohibit them from these proceedings?
Well, prohibiting them from proceeding seems to be difficult under the circumstances. From the way the question is written, it appears that a survey is not an actual vote. It's just getting opinions of the owners. And the board is not bound by whatever they receive from a survey. It could be overwhelmingly saying one thing, but the board chooses to do something else, which is within the authority of the board to do. So depending on the issue. The unit owners have very limited ability to stop board members from spending association money because that's what the board is in place to do.
Right.
It's recommended that if you're not happy with the direction the board is taking the community, your best bet is to do it through the political process and remove those individuals from being in the position to do that and elect individuals who more appropriately represent your views. And that will take politics within the community to get other owners involved and to hopefully bring them to your same perspective on that issue.
Hey, Robert, they have a follow-up question. It says they are calling it a vote to say they the community voted for the expenditure.
Well, calling it a vote doesn't make it so, because that's not an appropriate method of voting within the community. It's still an informal survey or poll of the owners. So that's their board's politics of perhaps convincing owners that they're following the will of the people and that this is what everybody wants, and therefore justifying whatever decision they make. If what they're doing is sufficiently out there, then I'd suggest consulting with an attorney to review the specific facts about what's going on to see if there is possible legal avenues of challenge open. But from the description, it sounds like it's not something too likely.
Well, we got to take a break. When we come back, we have more. K. Bender Rimbaum is the law firm. We're here with Robert K., board certified attorney Robert K. Give everybody the phone number at the office.
You can reach us at 800-974-0680 or go to website kbrlegal.com. There's a contact request form that's available on the first page, or write to us at info@kbrlegal.com.
We'll be right back.
K. Bender Rimbaum is a full-service community association law firm dedicated to the representation of community associations throughout Florida. On kbrlegal.com, you can learn more about their offices in Pompano Beach, Palm Beach Gardens, Orlando, Tampa, as well as throughout Miami-Dade by appointment. Several K. Bender Rimbaum attorneys are board-certified specialists in condominium and plan development law and assist clients with all matters of community association legal issues while keeping them up to date on new developments that affect their associations. K. Bender Rimbaum is also a well-known provider of free legal education for managers and board members. Contact K. Bender Rimbaum today by calling 800-974-0680. That's 800-974-0680 to reach any of their locations. You can also visit them online at kbrlegal.com or write to them at info@kbrlegal.com.
And we are back with the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV with your hosts, Steve-O, Sophia, and their expert guests.
And we are back. This is the Ask the Experts TV show. We're here with board-certified attorney Robert K. of K. Bender Rimbaum, their community association law firm. I guess it's been 3 or 4, maybe 4 years now. They invited us to one of their seminars, and it's where people can come in and ask a question, and Robert and one of Robert's partners, Michael Bender, would answer questions, and it was supposed to be for about an hour, hour and a half maybe. And I watched these people who would come in, and as others would ask a question, all of a sudden they got another question. And it turned out instead of everybody have 1 or 2 questions, it was more like the 50, 55 people who were there, which was crowded, all ended up with 5 or 6 questions. It was amazing. And they still do that now. And I said, you know what? With the show, why don't we do the same concept with the show? Have people write their questions down, because we get so many people saying how hard it is to call in when they're in their car. So that's what the show kind of turned into, and it's been wonderful. I mean, we fill up the whole hour every month with your text and your emails and your phone calls. And I think probably everybody likes Robert's soothing voice. Let's go back. This is Barb in Palm Beach Gardens. She wants to know, does a condo HOA board have the right to pass an assessment to make repairs to a limited access area, such as a terrace, that the rest of the owners have no access to?
Well, that's an interesting question, Barb. And unfortunately, the answer is that it really depends on the way the governing documents are written as it reflects those types of areas of maintenance and allocating the responsibility between the association and the unit owners. It's not uncommon for the documents to provide that to be an association responsibility while it's considered common element. A limited common element is a common element that's dedicated to the exclusive use of an individual unit owner. It's still common element. So whether or not the association is responsible to maintain it as a common expense will be indicated in the documents. Now, sometimes the documents are written where the association is to maintain it, but the cost is allocated just to the unit that it services. Which is an appropriate way of doing things as well, but not always. Sometimes it's general common funds, and instances provide for just the unit owner to be responsible. The problem of having the unit owner responsible is the association has no control over what's going to be done, and there may not be the same uniformity in the work product and the quality that is undertaken by a unit owner versus the association. So again, the short answer to that is it really is going to depend on the documents for your particular condominium.
Okay, got another write-in just now. This is from Dino. How to enforce a repeated violation by an owner in a condo when the owner ignores the continued fines. Obviously, we can't put a lien on the unit for fines. What are your suggestions?
That is part of the problem with fining, is that if an owner's not going to comply, well, sometimes they'll pay the fine and keep doing the violation. Fining is sometimes an okay method to resolve some of the less involved violations, the things that don't recur that frequently. But when you've got repeated violations that you can document, the proper method of dealing with that is through legal action. And the legislation adopted last year changed things to allow for condominium associations to have access directly to the courts once again, rather than being required to go through mandatory arbitration with the Division of Condominiums. It's still an option that can be pursued, but it's no longer the only option. There is the possibility of court. If the association chooses that route, the first step in that process is mediation, a demand for mediation, pre-suit mediation, where the parties sit with an independent third-party mediator to try and reach a resolution to the dispute without necessarily getting involved in litigation and the expense that goes with that. If that can't be resolved at that step of the process, then the association can file an action in the courts and pursue enforcement that way, or it still has the option of going to the arbitration route with the Division of Condominium. But fines have a purpose, but they're not the end-all be-all for enforcement assistance and shouldn't be considered that.
Janet and Davey wants to know, if windows belong to the unit owner, how can you have reserves for windows?
Well, like I told Barb, it's going to depend on your governing documents. Ownership is one aspect of the equation. The other is who's responsible to maintain. And then there's the issue of who's responsible to insure. In condominiums, there is a fairly lengthy insurance provision in the statute that obligates the association to provide insurance for a large portion of the condominium building, which includes items which are not the maintenance responsibility of the association. That wouldn't necessarily involve reserves, but if there are reserves in this particular instance, it would seem that the maintenance responsibility for the windows is that of the association in that particular condominium. If that's not the association's responsibility, then there should not be a reserve requirement for windows in their general budget. So that's the first step, is to do the analysis of who's responsible to maintain the item in the documents, regardless of ownership.
Okay. Jason in Hollywood wants to know, if a director on the board resigns, does there need to be an election to add a new board member, or can the remaining 4 select a newcomer?
Well, the statute provides that if there's a vacancy on the board during the term, then the remaining directors will appoint to replace that individual for the remainder of the term, unless the bylaws provide something else. So again, we have to check the bylaws to see if there's a different procedure for filling vacancies on the board from what the statute indicates.
Okay. It's one of our viewers right now who's been watching wants to know, who does the arbitration mediation if legal judicial circuit is the method to enforce?
You might need to read that again, because I'm not sure I followed the question.
I didn't understand the question either. Who does the arbitration / mediation if local judicial circuit is the method to enforce? Doesn't make sense, does it?
I'm not real sure exactly what's being asked here. I imagine what this...
You have a question in front of you, is that right?
Yeah. If
Okay.
we're going to court, what party is handling the arbitration? Well, it's not going to be arbitration. It's going to be mediation. The pre-suit mediation process that the association would follow is that they would send a written demand to the unit owner for participation in the pre-suit mediation and have a list of individual mediators for that unit owner to choose from, and then the individual would have to respond back within a certain amount of time, identifying which of the mediators will be acceptable. They are supposed to share the cost involved with the mediation between them, and then the association would arrange for that mediation, and then the mediator would be in touch with the unit owner. It's a private mediation company. There are many of them in all of the various jurisdictions, and they all generally seem to have people that are good at doing that type of work.
This is as long as we've been doing the show, I've never heard this is a good question. If an association leases retail space, I've never heard anybody's ever asked us about retail space on the show before. Must the revenue be placed into a special account? And can it be used to offset rising maintenance cost?
Well, this is, in my mind, more a question for the accountant than the lawyer, but generally speaking, when the association has retail space that is part of its overall operation, and it rents out that retail space to a third party, the revenues that come in can go in the general accounts of the association. They're accounted for in the association books and records differently than assessments. This is taxable income to the association, and it certainly can be used to offset maintenance costs. It's part of the general funds of the association. It just may have a different tax consequence by the way it's generated.
Okay,
and I understand leasing out to a restaurant vendor. It's any type of vendor would be the same situation. We've seen associations have like tiki bars by the pool side, and they'll lease that out to a third-party vendor who is operating a separate business from the association and just pays rent. And the rent is part of the association's operating funds, but it's not assessment, so it's taxable income, as I indicated, and has to be accounted for and reported accordingly. Expenses associated with that lease can offset the funds for tax purposes. If you're using it to do general maintenance on the condominium itself, it may not have the same tax benefit as using it to offset maintenance of the rented space, but that's again something for the association accountant to clarify.
Robert, I noticed some of the larger associations have not only just one, some of them have 2 and 3 restaurants. Are those usually leased out, or does the association own those?
It could be either way. More often than not, they're a separate unit, a commercial unit that has a separate individual owner that's going to own that unit and operate the business out of that unit, that's designated under the documents as commercial, and it may have limitations as to what type of commercial businesses can be in there. It might not. So it could be either way.
I always wonder about, because there are some larger associations that have 2 and 3 restaurants, not just one. Let's go to Hunter in Boynton. Townhomes need more teeth to enforce laws. They're just like condos, except they own their own walls and some own their own lots. What's the difference, townhomes and condos?
Well, townhomes can be condominiums. Then they also can be created as not condominiums.
Back to the docks again.
Back to the docks again is how they're originally created. Many townhomes are created as homeowner associations. In order to qualify as a homeowner association initially, as opposed to condominium, there has to be some actual real property involved in what the owner is purchasing. So that's why a townhouse can be more conducive to that, because it's multiple stories up and down with land underneath it. In a condominium, you got a big building with basically airspace, chunks of airspace throughout that the owners are purchasing, which is a different type of ownership. They don't own any actual land. They own the unfinished walls, floors, and ceilings inside of the space that they've purchased, and everything else is shared in common with everyone else. There are some laws. I mean, Chapter 720 is in place to provide some assistance to townhomes, just like homeowners associations. The rest would be within the governing documents themselves. If they're not drafted in a way that is best suited to the way the owners want the place to run, they would be subject to change by amendment based upon a vote of whatever number of owners the documents say. And that's a method to help resolve that person's issue on townhome enforcement issues.
Right. I'm going to get in one more question before we go to break, because we've got so many questions tonight. Our management company told us, people, that we need to vote for board members, minimum of 3 people, maximum of 5. Can they actually do that?
Well, there'd have to be a set number for that particular election. You're not going to have a sliding scale. The bylaws or articles of incorporation for the association typically spells out the parameters of the number of directors that there will be. Sometimes it's indicated as a range, 3 to 5, 3 to 9. Hopefully it's an odd number. And sometimes it's a specific number. And whichever it is, it should have an indication of how that can be changed. If it's a sliding scale, sometimes if it doesn't provide for a method of change, then it's generally up to the board to decide what the number is going to be. Quite often, there are provisions that say the exact number to be set by the unit owners prior to the actual election. So then the owners have to make that decision as to what the number is going to be. Once the number is established, that's the total number of seats on the board. And it's possible, let's say there's 7 seats and you have 2 people that either resign or cause the seat to be vacant. As in the prior question, the board can appoint to fill the vacancies, but they don't have to. They can wait till the next election and let the owners vote, so long as they have enough to constitute a quorum of the board, which out of 7 remains 4. So even though there's 2 vacant seats, the quorum number doesn't drop down to 3 because there's 5 that are actually seated. The quorum is tied to the number of total seats that are available to be filled initially.
Getting notes here, people saying, can you say the call-in number a little slower? It's 561-623-9429. If you want to call in, you have a question for Robert. We're going to go to break right now. It's our last break. We come back, we have more. K. Bender Rimbaum, Community Association Law Firm. We're, as always, the first Thursday of every night. Robert K., board certified Robert K., one of the senior partners, is with us. We'll be right back.
K. Bender Rimbaum is a full-service community association law firm dedicated to the representation of community associations throughout Florida. On kbrlegal.com, you can learn more about their offices in Pompano Beach, Palm Beach Gardens, Orlando, Tampa, as well as throughout Miami-Dade by appointment. Several K. Bender Rimbaum attorneys are board-certified specialists in condominium and plan development law and assist clients with all matters of community association legal issues while keeping them up to date on new developments that affect their associations. K. Bender Rimbaum is also a well-known provider of free legal education for managers and board members. Contact K. Bender Rimbaum today by calling 800-974-0680. That's 800-974-0680 to reach any of their locations. You can also visit them online at kbrlegal.com or write to them at info@kbrlegal.com.
And we are back with the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV with your hosts, Steve-O, Sophia, and their expert guests.
Hey, I'm glad that everybody is enjoying the TV version now. With all the questions that we get every week, phone calls, it's hard to get all the people who are thanking us for doing the TV version now. We just know that we appreciate your letters, and we'll always keep trying to improve the show. But TV, by what we're seeing so far, is going to be around for a long time with us. And plus, you know, Robert's got this beautiful face, and everybody can see him. Anyways, get back to the questions. Let's go to Bernie in Deerfield. He wants to know, are we obligated to screen, approve, and protect a unit owner when it comes to renting?
Well, I'm going to be like a broken record today because that's another issue that we have to refer back to the documents. It's not something that the statute addresses. It's going to be a document-specific provision. If the documents provide for the authority of the association to review and approve proposed lease transactions, then the board should be doing that. There's multiple issues that the board should be looking at, including what didn't used to be the case, but the financial capability of the tenant is an issue for the board to consider, even though it's also more relevant to the owner that's leasing it to them, because the statutes provide the association with the authority to go directly to the tenant if the owner becomes delinquent in assessments. So it's germane to the operation of the association to know that they'll have a financially viable individual to be asking to pick up the assessment responsibility if the owner fails to do so. So that and their background information are important items for the association to be reviewing in reaching a conclusion as to whether or not to approve it.
Robert, Julie in Palm Beach wants to know, do we still have to certify that we are a 55 and over every 2 years?
Well, the state of Florida used to require that. They don't anymore.
Okay.
But in order to qualify as housing for older persons, the association still, under federal rules, has to undertake a census every 2 years where they collect information to confirm who within each dwelling unit or living space property is the qualified 55 or older person within that particular property as a permanent resident. If there is no permanent resident in the unit, it wouldn't be counted in the overall totals. But for any unit that's permanently occupied, 80% of them or more have to have at least one individual over the age of 55 years. That's still a federal requirement. You just don't have to certify it to the state of Florida anymore.
Okay. Here's someone who just wrote in, said it's like what your classes say. Why updating your documents is critically important.
Absolutely true.
That's a good. Thank you, Ace. Okay, let's get back to that.
It's important for everyone to know that documents are created by developers when they create the community, and they're really written from the perspective of the developer, not how the operation is going to function after the developer turns over. So there are things that individual owners that run their own communities would want in their documents that aren't going to be there because developers don't put them there. So that's one of the main reasons we suggest relatively early on in a community's existence, the board do a review of that. And then over time, as things evolve in the law and in the world, there may be other things that the owners want to update and change as well.
I noticed some of these questions came in like a few days after your last show, and we got a lot of them. I just picked one out, but there was a lot of concern with the owners and with board members about the banks that they deal with. And they want to make sure, are they covered?
Well, clearly, if an association wants to best protect itself relative to banking, that they don't have more than $250,000 in any given banking institution. A lot of communities don't have that much money laying around, so it wouldn't be an issue. But if the association funds are going to exceed that amount, and there's a concern with the possibility, it is important to protect the association resources, and the fiduciary responsibility of the board is that it certainly makes sense to be diligent and make sure you're spreading it around to enough institutions. Now, from what we know, the banking industry is sound, and there are some outliers that happen from time to time, as we've seen, but in general terms, the banks are not dropping like flies. And those types of concerns, while warranted, it's not a situation where we have to panic at this point, but certainly be sure to make sure you're maximizing the protection the federal government provides to us in this area.
Well, we got to get out of here. The show goes by so fast. Give everybody your website address, because there's so much really great information on there.
You can find that information at kbrlegal.com. You can click on the resources tab, get articles on Rembaum's Association Roundup or Legal Morsels. You can click on the calendar and see all the different events. If you want to be contacted, there's a contact box on the first page. You can write to us at info@kbrlegal.com, or call us at 800-974-0680.
And Robert's got some of his Passover recipes on there too, that I'm sure. I can't even do that with a straight face. Happy Passover. And
Happy
all
Passover
of
to all who celebrate.
Yeah, happy Passover. We'll see you again next month with more Ask the Experts. Always. And we'll see you guys next week with more Ask the Experts. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.